welcome to Locke Key Unlocked, a podcast about Locke and Key, both the comic book and the Netflix series. I'm Alex.
I'm Justin.
I'm Pete.
And we've got a special treat
Little
for y'all
special treat.
today.
We dug into the archive.
The archives. Now, if you've just been listening to our Locke and Key podcast, you may not be 100% familiar with this, but we've been doing a live show in New York City almost every single Tuesday for the past 14 years. Is that where we're at right now?
Yes.
So we've had a lot of guests on the show, and as I was looking back through our various podcasts to try to figure out if there was anything tied to Locke and Key, I, of course, stumbled across our show from May 29th, 2012 with none other than Joe Hill, the writer of Locke and Key himself.
What?
That is so cool.
What are the odds?
And this was we had him on. Obviously, we've talked about our relationship with them and loving the comic throughout all of the time. But we had them on when we had him on when we were Alpha and Omega was coming out.
Yes. Yeah, it was right after Clockworks had finished. I wrote down the dates here. Clockworks ran through May 16th, 2012, so that had just finished a couple of weeks earlier. Alpha and Omega, which is the final volume of Locke and Key, hadn't quite kicked off yet, but that's where we were with that, and we hadn't read ahead or anything like that.
No.
So we were very curious about it. Also at that point, just in terms of the media level of things, it had been about a year since they had decided not to pick up the Fox pilot of Locke and Key. And at this point, the Hulu pilot and everything like that, even the announcement that maybe they were going to do a movie trilogy was years down the road. And the reason I bring this up is because we did talk to Joe about this a little bit. But what were you going to say, Pete?
I was just going to say this is also at a time where we weren't beaten down by life as much. You know,
geez.
like we were a little bit more hopeful, a little bit more exuberant. So yeah, there'd be a different. It's going to be a different tone to the show. Just a heads up.
I'm exactly the same.
Yeah. I got to tell you, I will tell you. So we've done, again, hundreds of shows at this point. Listening to this again, I was like, man, we have not changed our show at all.
Well, what's to change?
I know, it's perfect.
No one changes chili. Recipe for chili.
People experiment with chili all
Should
the
we
time.
experiment? We always go back home to just regular good old chili.
So a couple of things if you have never been to our live show or listened to our live show before, you can check all that out at Comic Book Club Live. That's on iTunes and everywhere
Because we're
else.
still doing it.
Yeah, we are still doing it at 7 p.m. every single Tuesday in New York at the Pit Loft. Come on by. We have great guests like Joe every single week. But what we are going to play for you, we're going to cut in right after the beginning of the show as we welcome Joe onto stage. This is in front of a live audience, so you'll hear them a little bit. We also have a dude named Boothman who mostly heckles us.
Yep.
I think that's fair to
Listening
say.
back, it seems like that was a mistake.
No, it's fine. It's fun. It's all in good fun. So you'll hear him a little bit. But we have a good long interview with Joe about what was going on with Locke and Key at the time. We also took a couple of questions from Twitter, so you'll hear that. The weird thing in the middle that you might not quite get if you don't regularly keep up with comics that aren't Locke and Key is we have a section called The Stack where we talk about a couple of comic books that came out at that time. That was a fun throwback for me because I was like, oh, yeah, I remember that. Irredeemable. There we go.
Oh, wow. Irredeemable.
Mark Wade's series.
Your pick was Irredeemable. Your pick was Batman Incorporated, and my pick was Chew.
Wow,
Which is
look at
interesting.
us.
Nice. Solid picks.
Yes, and it doesn't necessarily tie into Locke and Key, but Joe did offer up some opinions and thoughts about all of that stuff, so we left that in there with what you're about to listen to. And then after that, it gets into some audience questions. People in the house wrote out some questions that we read to Joe, and he talks about a lot of stuff with Locke and Key, including how would you use the head key, why comics for Locke and Key, creator rights, tying up the series, the media future, which is certainly interesting to hear, given that everything has gone on in the intervening years. But what we're going to do is we're going to kick it off with the live show now. You'll listen to that, and then we'll be back briefly at the end to kind of wrap things up here.
Oh, to be so young.
Enjoy.
Guys, I'm very excited about the guest that we have tonight. He writes probably our favorite comic here on the show, Locke and Key. Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Hill! Yeah! Welcome. Hello, Joe, please. Sit down. We don't know if our mics are working, but you should sit down anyway. How's it going?
Test. Yeah, nice. We start every show with a quick test.
Right, great. Joe, thank you so much for coming on the show, and thanks for coming down. As we said, Locke Key is, I don't know, it's my favorite comic book.
Yeah, I wonder why.
I didn't want to speak for you guys.
No, it is also, we've raved about it for years, literally since it came out.
It's my favorite, too.
Good.
Well, I was actually curious. I don't know if I've ever heard, how did you first come up with the idea for Locke and Key?
Is it a documentary or?
Yeah, when you locked out of your house, you didn't have any keys.
Good.
And you thought, what if I had all the keys?
Boothman's back.
At some point, I'll come up with a really good story about how Locke and Key came up with, and that will be the origin story. But I haven't been able to figure anything out yet, and the truth is so boring. You know, essentially, I was a failed writer. I had spent 3 years writing this novel, big epic fantasy, which became a huge international bestseller in my imagination. But in real life, it was turned down by every publisher in New York. It was turned down by every publisher in London. For an extra kick in the pants, it was turned down in Canada. And so I had completely sort of washed out as a novelist. I had some success with short stories, and I managed to break through with this one short story which got in some best of collections and which attracted the notice of a scout at Marvel. And at
What do
that
those
time,
scouts look like? Are they like scouts in Stratego?
This scout was
Stratego, they can defuse bombs. They're number 8. They're easy to kill unless you're a bomb, then they get the bombs.
I never played Stratego.
Really?
Yeah.
Anybody? Great game. Thank you. You two guys. Let's get a game going afterwards. Only the longest bearded men in the crowd. Stratego with me.
I think it's safe to say that Warner Brothers will spend $150 million on it.
Absolutely.
Bingo. I'm developing it as a movie. Yeah.
It's starring Tyler Kitsch's The Stratego.
Good.
Yeah, I'm good. So you're working, you're creating Stratego.
A bunch of creators from other fields had been hauled in by this talent scout, including Jason Aaron, and they wrote for a Marvel audition title. There were 2 secret edition titles. There was Spider-Man Unlimited and X-Men Unlimited. And
those were, so like they would put new writers on there just to
The secret of those titles were there were 2 stories in each issue, and the whole idea was to give guys who had not written comics a chance to sort of see if they could do it and make some money at the same time. So Marvel kind of stuck out these writers, these first-time writers. And so anyway, I did a story for Spider-Man Unlimited, an 11-page story. It was the absolute worst piece of garbage I've ever written in my life.
What happened?
Oh, my God, it was so horrid. It was about this. It was about a reality show called The Fanboys. And it was like 3 out-of-shape comic book losers.
It's cool that without a shape. I'll take loser.
Anyway, they try to imitate the deeds of superheroes only without superpowers, and they make fools of themselves, and they crash a helicopter in New York and everything. And it was only saved by some wonderful art from the late Seth Fisher, who actually somehow made my script funny, which it wasn't. I tried. But, and the funny thing is even though it was like the worst thing I ever had published, after that, the comic book field had its hooks in me, and I really wanted to experience that again because I discovered I loved putting together a comic script. Oh, cool. And, and growing up, all my favorite creators were comic book guys. They were Neil Gaiman and Alan Moore and Chris Claremont, Frank Miller. The only publisher I cared about as a kid was Vertigo.
Nice.
And so I was desperate to get another chance to write more comics. And I worked up some pitches for Marvel. I remember one of them was for a Baby Hulk storyline. It would have been a Hulk, because I had a little kid myself at that time, and I thought, wouldn't it be great if there was a 3-year-old who could Hulk out? And just imagine how tragic that would be, because you have no emotional control at 3, and, and
3.
But Marvel passed on that. Marvel also passed on my weird haunted house story, which was kind of like a house with like these mutant keys in it. I kept thinking about that story after Marvel passed on it. Some other publishers who have sort of like letters for a name, and months passed, and I would keep thinking up new keys and new ideas about this house. And eventually I had a novel come out called Heart-Shaped Box. Around the same time it came out, IDW contacted me and said, we'd love to do something with your short stories. We've had luck adapting short stories by writers. And I said, wait, don't adapt my short stories. Let me pitch on something else. I got this great idea for a haunted house story, and it will last exactly 6 issues. So that's how Locke and Key got started.
And you think that's a bad story? That's an awesome story.
I'm actually kind of curious. Was the original Marvel pitch, was that tied to something? Was that like supposed to be a Doctor Strange story or something?
It was supposed to be an original Vertigo-like title.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I also pitched Marvel on an idea for X-Men Unlimited in which, and I still think this would be a great comic. And if Tom Brevoort is out there and is listening to this, really wants me for Marvel, I had an idea for a story in which the house would be the mutant. It would be a kid who grew up and loved his childhood home, and then when his mutant powers kicked in, he essentially becomes the house. And so, in the story, in this standalone story, Kitty Pryde would show up with some other X-Men looking for the mutant and not able to find him. And meanwhile, the house would have all these crazy things would be happening. The house doors slamming and all this. And gradually they figure out the house is the kid they're looking for.
And they're like, my God, we're inside of his butt.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that.
That's the cliffhanger at the end.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe that's pretty good.
Oh, you just blew his
Maybe
mind.
they would have said yes if I pitched them on that.
Probably. How'd you get hooked up with Gabriel Rodriguez?
My friend Chris Ryle, he wasn't my friend then. I didn't know him, but the editor of Locke and Key showed me some artists, and he showed me some guys who did blood really well, like guys with like grotty looking Wolverine guys with like blood dripping down them and stuff.
Cool.
And Gabe didn't really do that. What Gabe did was he drew people who were sort of adorable.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is the guy I want.
The juxtaposition of
Most people don't understand. I think a lot of people misunderstand how horror works. I think that they think that if you just throw enough entrails at the reader, they'll be scared. I'm all for entrails. I've got no problem with that. But I think that you have to care about the source of the entrails first. That you have to identify with a character and love them and care about them. And then it really hurts when they're hanging from a meat hook.
yeah.
But you got to make people care first. And in some ways, Locke and Key is like the world's longest, meanest practical joke, because
man.
we've everyone.
Yeah, I know.
Well,
I
everyone
worry
grew up
for these characters that I don't want to see on meat hooks.
It's when you watch movies in the 80s, films like Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th, you see these disposable teenagers who you don't care about, and you actually, you've got the slut, you've got the jock, you've got the smart kid, you've got the geek, you've got the virgin, and it's
I'm like
cabin
4
in
of
the
those people.
Slut.
Slut and virgin. Figure that out.
That is tough. You have these characters, and you never really care for them, and you wind up rooting sadistically for the, perversely for Freddy Krueger, and someone gets on the meat hook and you laugh about it. And I kind of hate that. I hate the idea of the audience being enlisted on the side of the bad guy. And so Locke and Key is an attempt to do the teen slasher film where you're forced to get to know the kids, and so then when bad things happen, it's not just the slut and the virgin. These aren't disposable people. Their lives matter to you, and their deaths will matter too. And there'll be a
spoiler.
and there might be a few. Anyway.
Cool it.
Now,
Cool it.
I'm curious, following up on that, do you care about Dodge? Do you feel for Dodge, or do you just think she is despicable at this point?
In Clockworks, we go back to the future. We go back to the 80s, and we get the backstory of Dodge, and we discover something terrible, which is that Dodge was a really great kid. Loving, forgiving, decent, funny, relaxed. Sort of basically the kid everyone wanted to be in high school, and too cool for him. He's so cool he doesn't even know it. And then there's this tragic accident, and he becomes this twisted Freddy Krueger type figure. And a lot of people die. I mean, if you haven't read Clockworks, I'm not going to say who, but a lot of people die back in the 80s, and a lot more are going to die in the present day.
Stop saying that.
But the thing is, I believe that stories have to be about something more than themselves. You want a story to ask interesting questions. And you know, I think everyone has had this experience of being in high school and then, you know, the night of the prom, 4 teenagers get wiped out in a drunk driving accident. And you go, oh my God, you know, how the hell could that happen?
Demon Gate is what I always say.
Yeah, right. Or exactly.
Doesn't make people feel better.
or it's either a drunk driving accident or it's demon possession. Mm-hmm. And you know, or both. Right. You know, and so Locke and Key partially explores that idea of the high school tragedy that, you know, everyone is sort of aware of.
Now, getting back to the art a little bit, his art is, you know, you've mentioned such a cool kind of take on it. After a while, did it start inspiring your writing a little bit? Because it felt like it did a little bit, especially with the Calvin and Hobbes stuff.
Yeah.
And like that, it was such an amazing, like having these characters drawn so well and also a little cartoony and fun, and then having all the horrible things happen was such a crazy play on emotions. And
in the next couple of months, we have an issue coming out, a standalone story called Locke and Key Grindhouse. And,
man.
And it's a throwback to the crime comics of the 50s and 60s. And you'll never believe Gabe drew it. It's so completely different from his style.
He's amazing.
He can, I mean, the great thing about him is he can reinvent his style to do almost anything.
Wow.
Do you love him? Nearly as much as Pete does.
Yeah, Pete loves him a lot.
Well, I definitely feel in some ways like Gabe and I share unibrain. You know,
Yeah.
like we are the same. You know, we are the old married couple where I start a sentence and he finishes it.
That is
You know?
lovely.
And I've learned more.
He's having a crazy conversation wherever he is right now.
Yeah, probably freaking out his family.
Yeah, definitely.
He's just, you know, the other thing is, you know, when I started, I had the sort of arrogant writer notion that I was sort of the auteur and Gabe was just going to follow my instructions. And it's been a great lucky break for me to discover that that's not the case early on. I've learned as much about those characters from the way Gabe has drawn them as he's ever learned from anything I've written about him. And his sense for how to stage a suspenseful scene, I think, is unmatched in comics.
Yeah, I mean, there were literally that first issue where there was that thing where he's sitting by the water, and all of a sudden I jumped, and I'm reading a comic book. Like, that's how amazing of not only writing but the art to suck you in like that, where you're jumping like you're in a movie theater.
And that's the last time he's jumped.
Yeah, Pete lost the ability to jump after that. It was really sad.
Especially everything is so tense, and he's the most darling man in person.
He's a sweet guy, you know, and I always kind of enjoy knowing, you know, what a loving family guy he is. I always enjoy, you know, saying, well, now we're going to shove the kid in front of the school bus. You know,
Make him look like your son. Did you say that?
Oh, jeez.
What? I'm not writing it.
Weirdo.
Yeah.
But you guys have created such an amazing comic that, like, I'm nervous to read it. Like, I'm so invested, but I'm also so nervous.
It's like asking the hot girl out to prom.
Yeah. I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be a horror
Yeah.
show. I know that much, but.
yeah, I mean, I just hope we can stick the landing. You know, everyone's had fun with it so far, and I mean, and you know what happens with a lot of long running series is then you get the wet fart in the bathtub at the end. You know, where it's like,
hear you.
What? You know, I mean, I'm actually planning.
You heard it here first. That's the end of Locke Key.
Is that the title of the last arc? Is the wet fart?
The thing which we've had a lot of arguments about is I'm replacing Tyler with Robert Patrick in the last arc.
Yeah, we weren't going to ask about that.
He's going to be a cousin who comes in, and the thing is, he will still have the same chemistry.
Yeah, definitely.
With,
no one
you know,
would ever.
all the other characters and
Won't
stuff.
miss a beat.
I don't think so. I'm feeling good about it.
Let's talk about the end a little bit. I'm sure you get this all the time, but what, you know, even beyond what you're planning for the end of Locke and Key, what's your philosophy on it? Is it plan it out in advance? I wrote, you know, the J.K. Rowling, I wrote this chapter years ago, or is it let's see what happens and let that augment the ending?
Fucking kill them all and let God sort it out.
I don't know if that works for the written word.
Sorry, no spoilers. No, you know, I forget who said this, but I think it was George R. R. Martin in a recent interview where he talked about
He said, "What am I
if you were
doing?"
hoping for a happy ending, I probably shouldn't have brought him up. He said in a recent interview that there are two kinds of writers. There are writers who are architects who plan and map and they know everything that's going to happen. And then there are writers who are gardeners who plant things and they kind of know what they're going to get, but they don't exactly know how it's going to grow. And that's always been my philosophy. I always feel like I'm going to create the situation. I'll have the characters there, and then they will organically find their way to the end. And that's the safest way to do things. Because if you plan things out, then you start to play it safe, and I decided years ago, if I put a character in a situation and they couldn't hack it, they were going to have to fucking die, and that was going to be the end. And I wasn't going to twist reality or play games with possibility to keep them going. Nothing like, in a TV series, you have a character you love, that person is signed to a 3-season contract and they're not going to die. If you really think about it, they're not going to die. No one is signed to a contract in a comic book. Anyone can die, and that's how it ought to be.
Was there anything that happened that surprised you during the writing of the series?
Anything that surprised me during the writing of the series? No.
Cool.
No,
Well,
not really.
Let me ask you about a specific issue. The issue.
Yeah. No, wait.
Okay.
Yeah. I was a little bit.
I feel better now.
I was a little bit surprised that Sam came so close to getting. This is a terrible spoiler. Sorry if you haven't read this. You just fast forward through the video or whatever for a couple seconds. I was a little surprised at how close Sam came to getting revenge. I never imagined that he would be such an engine of rage. And, I basically thought at the end of Welcome to Lovecraft that there wasn't that much more for Sam to do. And it turned out that,
I almost did a spit take there.
I kind of love Sam Lester. I think he's kind of a fascinating character.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about where we're going. So you have Omega, which is the last mini-series is coming up. You have Grindhouse, and there's one more one-shot as well,
The X-Men
right?
crossover.
Great.
Oh man.
Where I'm finally going to get to explore this mutant.
And then it's all a big mutant houseboy wet fart in the bathtub.
I kind of feel like a little bit like when you're talking about a mutant that turns into a house, I'm having a big moment. Like, what's fun about playing with a house? Like, if he turns into a house, then what happens? Then he's like, paint me.
Are you?
Hey, listen.
Paint me.
Listen. It should be pointed out, Marvel did pass on it. No one said that they made the wrong decision. But if you've read a lot of Neil Gaiman, you've read, books of magic, and so you remember seeing Baba Yaga's house, and so I love the idea of the house getting up on its legs and just,
it's like
stomping
chicken feet
away,
just running away.
Big chicken feet.
Yeah, you could have Beak live in this mutant house.
You should have it do some
specific reference.
That was such an obscure reference. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Don't worry about it. He has chicken feet. It's not important. There's a couple of questions that we have from people on Twitter.
Yeah, okay,
If you
sounds
don't
good.
mind, I'm going to try to. The first question is somebody wrote, "What is Twitter?" Which is
Pete just etched that into your iPad.
That's super meta.
Let's see. Here we go. Okay, can you tease anything about? This is from JSA1036. Can you tease anything about the superhero comic you and Gabe are working on?
Oh yeah.
No, not really. The Gabe, I feel a guilt and shame about some of the things I forced Gabe to draw over the last few years. And this is a man who barely knows his family anymore because he spent so much time locked in his studio. And the whole reason Gabe got into comics was just to have the chance to draw a fucking dude in a cape. It's all he ever wanted. So we've talked a lot, and I promised him after Locke Key is done, we can do a cape comic. We've had some conversations with someone who owns one of the licensed characters. I don't want to say whether it's Marvel or DC, but we've had some conversations and we've sort of received provisional approval to tackle a certain character. And we'll probably do that for 5 or 6 issues before we go into our next creator-owned thing.
Oh, so let's say he has a cape. He or she has a cape.
This isn't the cape thing that had your name on it.
This is not the cape.
Okay.
No, this is not.
He keeps talking about capes, but it's not.
This is a character, for example, like I'm trying.
Go on.
Like Wonder Girl. or something like that. Only it's not the character with the
So
boob.
we can safely say it's not Wonder Girl, then,
Yeah, it's
right?
not
Because
Wonder
you
Girl.
wouldn't have
Cross
said
Wonder
it
Girl off
otherwise.
the list.
So cool.
Yeah.
Check that out. We just broke some news.
Now,
one thing. I don't think that Catalina, the Gabe's wife, would be down with him drawing the boob window in panel after panel. And one of the reasons
Power
why,
Girl off the list.
Yep.
one of the reasons
Here we go.
why
What
I
other
think-
characters have a boob window?
Wait.
One of the reasons why I think Locke and Key has done well as an independent comic is because it hasn't slammed the door on female readers. The female characters have believable proportions and wear believable clothes and make believable decisions.
Take it easy. Take it easy.
And I largely think that that's because, for two reasons. The first is, even though you see a lot of nudity in most horror films, boobs are not frightening. They just not.
Agree to disagree.
I beg to differ.
Boobs are not scary.
They're
And the
beautiful.
other thing is I think Gabe lives in fear of Catalina, and if there was too many flopping boobs, there'd probably be, in trouble with her. So,
I
so he's
also
been tasteful.
think that it's just, it's an amazing comic. So regardless of who you are, you're drawn to it. I think sometimes people get a little carried away with the, women don't like certain things, a little bit. So I don't want to.
Well, now wait a
Peter's
minute.
a big spokesman for women in comics.
Yeah,
so.
right. No. I think that a lot of female readers are totally okay with overt displays of female sexuality in comics. It's the difference between being in control of it and just being there to provide it.
Exactly.
And
I think smart writing is smart writing. Great art is great art. So regardless of, if you're being a douchebag, it's not going to.
I think a lot of both genders are going to jump all over the comic that we're going to be doing for Marvel. Captain, I think it's Mistress Wonderthong. And,
No, that's good.
I predict a big following for that one.
Cool.
I know. I'm curious to hear her origin.
This is a question from Blair K77, which I'm going to assume is an inside joke of some sort. When does the poor Corky get couch privileges?
Poor Corgi.
I think that's probably a reference to my dog McMurtry, who's is sort of like my sidekick for when I write. It's under the desk. So, and he's never going to get couch rights. However, a corgi features prominently in the plot of Locke and Key Grindhouse.
Really?
And will also. Maybe I better not say anything with that. Gabe and I
almost got
have
'em.
started to experiment with standalone stories set in the Locke and Key world. And there will be more standalones. There will be eventually enough to fill, about 6 issues worth of them to fill a book that will come out after Locke and Key Omega.
You're kind of
that's
really
awesome.
focused on this 6 number, I noticed.
Yeah, well, I think that makes it. I think it makes a satisfying sized book that if you don't have around 6 and you charge people a lot of money, sometimes they feel a little ripped off,
Sure,
maybe
sure.
rightly. And I think that once you start going much past 6, then you wind up with like I hate. And a lot of people have asked if there's going to be a Locke and Key omnibus. Personally, I hate omnibuses. Because these big, things that you can't, big phone books that you can't actually read. Sort of unpleasant. I also really dislike. Marvel did an omnibus edition of the black and white Dracula comics that came out in the 70s, the magazine-sized ones, and they inked out all the bare flesh. And they were mature comics, and is Marvel going to come with me to my next trip to the museum and stick tape over,
Yeah,
rooms
they
probably.
like that? I mean,
Hopefully.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Smut.
Smut.
it's Gene
Great, real
Colan's art.
good.
It's Gene Colan's art. I kind of thought it was nice before someone came in with the ink.
Yeah, sure. It's like E.T. They replace guns with, walkie-talkies. Nobody likes that.
Spielberg admitted it was a mistake.
Yeah.
Well, but
Spielberg
E.T. also in the original
admitted-
edition, he had huge boobs.
Yeah. Well, also those guns shot boobs. I don't know if
It was real
Nobody
scary.
likes that.
Yeah. You ever-
With ideas like that, you could write for the big 2, no problem.
Nailed it.
Last thing that I wanted to ask you, the Locke and Key pilot, I know it's probably
Yes.
maybe potentially a sore subject,
I
but
can't wait for season 2. Season 1 was I know a lot of people unhappy about the.
I did see the pilot last year at San Diego, and I thought it was great. Do you feel like, is there any hope of ever seeing anything in another medium of Locke and Key again?
Yes,
Yeah.
I do. I think that there was Mark Romanek, who directed Never Let Me Go, 1 Hour Photo, and some and definitely the hottest but most upsetting Nine Inch Nails video of all time. He directed a 1 hour pilot of Locke & Key. It was written by Josh Friedman. Some great performances in it, especially from Skylar Getner, who plays Bodhi. And it's just this incredibly, so not like a TV kid. So like a real kid, which makes the things that happen to them very scary and stuff. They came out with a movie quality pilot. I know I'm invested in it, so I'm not the most unbiased person, but I thought it was strong in almost exactly the same way Super 8 was strong. Very like 80s Spielberg Poltergeist. Fox passed on it because they felt that it was too dark. And I hear they just approved a Hannibal Lecter TV series. So I see that they're moving in a sunnier direction.
Well, he starts a band, so it's different. It's like a Glee.
Yeah, it's like Glee,
Zooey Deschanel moves in with him.
And she is just the darlingest.
They share fava beans in the evening. Yeah, that's cute.
Yeah.
So, I do think that there's still a good chance that there will be, there will be some sort of TV or movie future for Locke & Key. Conversations have continued about it. The whole creative team involved with it still wants it to happen.
Nice.
So we'll see. I think that we've got a decent shot, so we'll see.
Wow,
right.
That's good news.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right, guys, we're going to move on with our next section, which we like to call the stack.
Yeah!
All right, and in the stack, each of us has made a pick, some particular comic book we like this week, so we're going to go to bat for it. First thing we're going to talk about, Pete's pick, Irredeemable, number 37 for
Irredeemable.
Over to you. So this is the last issue of Mark Waid's series about a Superman gone bad. Pete, what did you like about this?
Yeah.
Final issue, which is kind of sad. Mark Waid did an amazing job in the series, and I was very interested to see how it was going to end. I thought it ended in a really good way. I didn't feel upset like we were talking before. I didn't think it was a fart in the water. And I felt like he did a really great job, and it felt honest, and it really felt true to what he started out with. So I thought it was definitely a hell of a run.
What kind of fart did you think it was?
I thought it was a silent but deadly fart in the world. I've never read a single issue of this, so I jumped on for the final.
Oh, what'd you think?
A lot of new characters. I'm surprised he brought in so many new characters for the end. A lot of so I don't know where he's going to take it next is the only thing. Like not much of a cliffhanger. It's a good issue. I mean, I feel like you see a lot of like sort of Superman analogs in the world these days, world of comics. And if I may, should I spoil the ending or at least talk about it? Don't talk about it at all.
Oh boy.
Sorry, I don't know. When do people read comics? Like 20 years from now? How's it happen? So I'm dying in 20 years. Come to my deathbed and we'll talk about this.
About Irredeemable 37.
I just want to say I really like his costume with the arrow on the chest. It's like the cock is down here.
Yeah. That's his catchphrase. I don't know if you read the issue.
Like the male analog. To
Man
like
and the Legend.
Yeah.
The cock is there.
This is a really good
cock is
series. It started out as a Superman gone bad riff, but it really transcended that nicely. It's too bad we can't talk about the ending, you guys, because it's a little ridiculous.
It's a little ridiculous. It's real cocky.
Or
that's not a pun on what you were just saying. It's just like,
it is.
It's just like, really? So that's all I guess we'll
Wait
say.
a minute. What do you say? Was it good or not?
The issue, the end, specifically.
People want information from this show.
Oh,
Well,
boy.
it's harder. We can't talk about it.
You can tell if it was good or not.
True. I thought it was too much. I was sort of like turned off by that.
yeah, but if you know about Mark Waid, he's kind of obsessed with Superman. He knows a lot about it, so I thought it was a little bit of a nice tip of the hat to be like, hey, this is how Superman.
Don't say anything else.
Yeah. All right, let's move on since obviously we can't talk about this. Let's instead talk about something I'm sure we also can't talk about. Batman Incorporated, #1 from DC Comics.
Yeah.
Justin, this was your pick. What did you like about this?
Now, I sort of have felt like Grant Morrison's Batman in the last couple of years has been truly insane and very hard to read. It's just like all these characters who you don't really know.
You think Grant Morrison's writing is a little crazy in the pants?
Well, but a lot of people
crazy in the pants.
A lot of people still like it. A lot of people are like, "Oh, this is a great issue," and I want to be like, "Tell me one thing that happened in that issue." When they're like, "Oh, the Batman from Zur-An-Ar fought a Batman who is inside a microchip," and you're like, "What? How does that fight go?" I don't know. But there's a lot of the art's, he always has great artists, and it's always really cool. This issue, I feel like sort of boils out some of the craziest stuff, and sort of it's a nice Batman comic. There's some great Robin stuff that happens in here. Nice cliffhanger at the end, and the art by Chris Burnham, I believe, is awesome. So I love this comic.
Yeah, it's a great team up. I really think that
it's a great team up, Batman and Robin.
I meant the writer and the artist.
Oh.
Yeah, writer and the artist.
Who would have thought?
Joe, I'm curious. I know you didn't necessarily get a chance to read this issue, but do you have a favorite Batman story? Or is there some particular run
I thought you were going to
really like?
say, do I have a favorite Batman? I was about to say, no one's really done him as well as Adam West. I mean,
Nice. Yeah.
Do I have a favorite Batman story? I like Neil Gaiman's. I thought, whatever happened to the Cape Crusader was a beautiful, imaginative, fun, nutty, crazy pants story. And Neil Gaiman said a thing where he said, when you take over a character like this, you want to tell one story that only you could have told. And I really feel like, if that's a story only Neil Gaiman could have.
Follow-up question. What's your Batman story? Do you have one that you're like burning to tell?
Yeah, I got a great idea for Batman story.
All right, just write it here.
Right now.
With your mouth. With your words.
Wayne Manor is a guy,
Yeah.
and Batman's like, my God, we're in his butt. I'm just throwing that out
That's
there.
it.
You're saying Grant Morrison's all crazy. I'm like, I don't know. This looks pretty normal. I get to page 3. There's like Batman fighting the goat-headed guy and like slaughterhouse. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
I do. There's a really nice moment in here where Robin adopts a cow and says, "This will be our bat cow."
Yeah.
Like,
cool.
He says
the cow's face is unbelievable.
yeah. Well, he just became Bat Cow. Imagine if
Not really.
Imagine if someone came here and said, "You're now out of shape, Batman."
That's all I've ever wanted to be.
Can I just not to start a little bit of a fight here, but
Let's do this.
That's what we live for.
can I just say that I think the Marvel films bury the Christopher Nolan Batman?
Oh, I agree completely with you.
I mean,
in fact, having
I
seen
hear some
Avengers,
grumbles out there, but I mean, it's just like really,
What are you saying right now?
Does Batman got to be the Godfather? And what's up with the voice? I mean, Christian Bale is like he's always on the can. He's
he's got a very tight butthole.
Well, you got to disguise your voice,
He's like
so no one
Sphincter
knows
Man.
when you talk regular.
I've said this a couple times since seeing Avengers that like my anticipation for the Batman movie has gone so far down. Like seeing Avengers and seeing the trailer where it's just like everyone's miserable.
What is everybody's memory just going out? Do you remember how amazing the last Batman movie was?
Yes, it was
I only
very
just
good.
got out of it. It was so long.
Yeah.
It's like 8.5 hours long. And it's like
There are like 7 plots.
hours perfect is what it is.
8.5 hours
Really?
short. Says
I will
Pete.
agree with you in the voice. I think every time in the trailer for Dark Knight Rises, I was like, all right, this looks good. And then they cut to Christian Bale. He's like,
But especially they have
Bane's voice is great.
Well, yeah. I was going to say, Christian Bale's voice is so crazy, the Bane voice has to be totally incomprehensible.
Yeah.
And just like someone scratching.
and I wish Anne Hathaway had a ridiculous voice too. I wish it was
She was
like,
like,
it's two guys talking, dubbing her voice.
Best superhero film flat out is Chronicle.
Yes.
ah,
I still haven't
Nice.
seen it. It was really good.
Chronicle is the best superhero film, not just of the year ever. Chronicle's the best. Yeah.
Ever?
Chronicle's the best superhero.
why do you
film
say that?
Because
You're talking about Chronicles of Narnia? Is that what you're saying?
because it's
Chronicles
smart,
of Riddick.
because
Yeah.
it's smart and it's real and you get emotionally tangled up in these characters because basically Chronicle is the best superhero film ever because of the talent show scene. And there is nothing that human, that awesome, that smart in any other superhero film.
Wow.
That sort of
Gotta
like
rewatch this.
that which just feels so natural, just like not like a $50 million CGI set piece, just like real kids.
I mean, they found that footage according to the
that's
movie.
all right.
So, like, that makes it
It's a documentary.
more real. Yeah.
All right, we're going to move on with my pick, which was Chew, number 26 from Image Comics. Now, I will say, I'm usually okay with Chew.
Yeah, you're not a big fan.
I like it, but I don't love it. I'm
now,
not
do
as
you like
in-
this because Chew wasn't in it and you were like, yeah.
Yeah, and that's totally possible. But I would say I love this issue of Chew in particular. I think it always has crazy ideas. It's always very funny, but it doesn't really feel very emotionally grounded. And here we get Chew, the main character, who he's a chibopath. he can bite things and sense their history. Here, his sister,
And future.
who can bite people and tell the future, and his brother, who is just a chef, team up to
Just a chef?
Just a chef.
How dare you?
What he can do with eggs and toast is amazing.
Yeah,
All right, I'm sorry. I don't have the palate you guys do.
that's for goddamn right.
Yeah. Anyway, they team up to take down this guy who stole paintings that if you lick them, they taste delicious. And it's very funny throughout. It's a good little heist thing, but it shows the relationship between these two characters that haven't really gotten much to the spotlight before, and it's very enjoyable. It was definitely my favorite of the week. What'd you guys think?
This was the first issue of Chew, I think. I don't know. These are two comics that I just don't read. Let me get this straight. Chicken doesn't exist on this world?
No, it's illegal.
Why?
Bird flu.
Oh, and NASA runs shit.
Yep.
And that's the only two things that are different.
Well,
That's an unclear
there's a lot
answer.
that's different. I just described
What's so hard
it.
for you to grasp?
I described it as
Like,
people
can fly.
in the real world, people can't bite people that sense their future.
Yeah.
Yeah, what?
I'll tell you later.
So I don't know. I was sort of I didn't know quite which character. I didn't know about the missing character, but like it's sort of a funny. I didn't think it was super funny. So I guess that's
Wait,
where
you just said,
funny,
it's funny.
funny.
but
it's
I didn't think
funny.
it was super funny.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's a different. You know how there are regular people and super people was in between.
I just love how we read comic books all the time and people fly and kill people and shoot lasers. You pick up Chew and you're like, what?
This could
no
never
chicken.
happen.
Well, no.
There's no chicken?
Well, it's like it's just illegal, Pete, as we established. But it seems very arbitrary to be like the world I want to create. NASA gets a bunch of props. Chicken gets no love. Like, what happened to this dude?
There's nothing arbitrary about being bitten by a radioactive spider.
Well, yeah, no, I know.
Yes!
But it's one thing, and then that's the crazy thing. This has two crazy things, and then there's this character.
Hold on. Peter Parker being bitten by a radioactive spider is the only crazy thing in Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's the beginning, and then it
And his
introduces-
parents came back as robots.
Yeah.
And
You're
wait,
really
what?
digging
Spies.
yourself into
No.
What
This
about
is
the doctor who's an octopus?
Yeah.
because this. Yeah, no, I'm
Or the
familiar with.
doctor who's a lizard.
Huh?
Or the other doctor who was bitten by a radioactive doctor and became super doctor.
He's the only doctor I would go to in the Marvel universe.
He's really good.
But the story's about a person that bites people and can understand things about their lives. The chicken thing is such a left turn.
What about a
as
guy
is
who's
the
a
NASA thing.
reporter, when he takes off his glasses, nobody knows who he is?
Yeah, but that's not part of the story. It's not like they sat there and they were like,
suspension of
Pete, take
disbelief.
off your glasses.
"Are you saying that?
Where'd Pete go?
Are you saying that Siegel and Schuster mistrusted glasses?"
Yeah.
So anyway, great comic. Thanks.
All right, that's it for the stack. Guys, we are going to move on with our next section, which is my favorite section because you guys out there made it up. It's your audience questions. And for that, we're going to go to Boothman. First of all, Boothman, how does it feel to be actually back in a booth?
Oh, you know.
Aww.
No, it's cool. I like it.
Okay, let's get the first question.
Oh, all right.
Enough about you.
Yep. First question is for Joe. Where do you land on the whole creator-owned versus Marvel DC debate with many not able creators, notable, not able, that's a different thing.
Not able.
Notable creators renouncing the big two. Will you be, and also, will you be purchasing before Watchmen?
That's a lot of...
okay, there's
Yeah.
a few things to unpack there.
Yeah.
But the first thing is I don't think that my opinion matters because it's because something has happened in comics that can't be reversed, which is, a few publishers have started to say, we just want to publish your books like an ordinary publisher, and you'll keep the film rights and the game rights and the action figure rights and all the rest of it, and go with God. We're just going to be a publisher like the. I have a day job writing novels, and it was never even discussed that the publisher would somehow own those characters and be able to hire someone else to write a sequel or take those and go make a movie, because it's just understood that's not how it is in publishing. Comic books has this sort of perverse throwback philosophy to the 50s, that somehow if you publish a writer or an artist, then you're going to own their work forever and own all their good ideas. And that whole way of doing business is slipping away so rapidly that it will probably almost completely vanish in the next 5 years. Marvel and DC will continue to have their property, their creative real estate. But new ideas like Walking Dead, those are going to publishers who are willing to let the creators keep their rights. So in a way, I don't feel like my opinion matters. It's at this point, that's how the rights are flowing, and there's no way to turn it back. As far as before Watchmen goes, I mean, I think it's awesome. I'm actually working on Before Watchmen.
Nice.
In it, there's like a Rosart sperm who like punches out the other sperm, and he's like, this ovary is a dead dog rotting in the street. These fallopian tubes are filthy. And no, I think it's.
I think your voice is very over the top.
It's a little
really
over the top.
pulled me out of
It's a little over the top.
I think it's horrifying. I mean, I think it's really gross. There are lots of creators working on Before Watchmen who I adore, and I'll keep buying their work and stuff. But I think, I think it's like a bad joke. It's, what would, I just don't understand. I also think, people tend to make fun of Alan Moore's passions, and when he, decides to, the new Locke and Key is dedicated to Alan Moore and Neil Gaiman. And, a friend of mine joked that Alan Moore was going to have his name taken off the dedication and replaced by his, but the thing is, I have great sympathy with Alan Moore's point of view. They promised him one thing and they didn't give it, no wonder he feels betrayed. And this is, this is sort of even worse. I mean, this is like before Citizen Kane, Yeah, it's gross.
Yeah.
So, it's a bad idea.
They would be like building the sled.
It is.
Spoiler.
Hey, yeah, geez.
Yeah,
Dude,
wow.
jeez.
That movie is only 1 million years old.
Yeah.
It was the first movie.
It was.
Well, it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't quite the first film, but I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
There were a few films.
No, I'm pretty sure it was the first movie.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, we're going to get the next question.
Okay, next question. Which comic book character do you want as a drinking buddy?
Oh, nice.
Oh, boy. This is for
Wolverine, because he would sober up fast and drive us home.
Real logistical answer to that question. Would you guys talk, or you just be like, "Hey, bub, I want to go home now"?
Yeah, well, what do I need to talk? I'm not going to talk about my feelings with Wolverine. Just want to,
What do you do when you drink with
Yeah,
people?
you talk about your feelings, Pete, when you drink?
you just drink.
And in
no
silence.
How can anyone
Wow.
pick anything besides Scarlet Witch? Wouldn't it be great to go drinking with Scarlet Witch?
Wait. Hold up. Why? Wait, you love her?
She's so cute, and she's smart, and she's smart, funny. She's got class and stuff, and she looks good in the cape. Who would want to go
Good in
drinking
the
with her?
cape.
Come on.
What about her weird, doesn't she have the little weird thing that
Wouldn't you
just
like to
hovers
see her let her
here?
hair down though?
Yeah.
That thing off?
So you don't want to go have a beer with her. You want to have
Who
sex
wants to
with
have a beer
her.
with Wolverine? Who wants to have a beer with
anybody unless you're going to have sex with them.
We're having beers right now.
Who wants to go have like a beer with Cyclops? It's like
Well, nobody.
start drinking, burning holes in the ceiling and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And I mean, or like Wolverine, who probably it's cool. Like everyone loves Wolverine and stuff, but like, how do you think the dude smells? Guy probably
Wow,
smells
very
like day
censored.
3 STC. STCC. Just
I'm sure he showers.
You're
sure?
sure?
You ever
You're
seen him
sure
do
he
it?
showers? Have you ever seen him?
Yeah, that's what I want to see. I want to see an X-Men
My theory is
comic.
they don't call him Wolverine for nothing. Okay,
Yeah.
it's like
He stinks
Langella.
like Wolverine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Just was wondering if maybe Wolverines regularly take showers or something.
I think they should release a
No, I
book
don't
where
think so. I
all the
think they
Marvel
let themselves
characters
dry.
shower, just so we know. Just so we know who's
They did
doing
do the
it.
swimsuit issue.
Yeah, great
They did.
collectible. I remember that.
I love Namor's, doesn't he have the seashell, he has the
He was wearing, in that issue, he was wearing a full bodysuit.
That's talk collectibles.
Yeah. That's an
that would-
uncomfortable
they
way
could-
to spend your life.
They could move a lot of seashell cod pieces at
This
CCC.
is the second show in a row where somebody has brought up seashell cod pieces.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, specifically namers. Not a lot of people wear them.
No, just in general
I
for the
didn't rip
season.
it off. I never watched this crap.
Ooh.
Justin, what's your answer?
I'm angry now.
Cool. Let's get the next question.
All right,
Silver
next-
Surfer
All right.
is my
Nobody
answer.
cares.
You think
Shrink?
Yeah, oh, you big drinker.
Oh, stop.
You ever hung out with a regular surfer? You think the Silver Surfer's any different?
Probably drinks Coors
I'll tell you
Light.
what.
He's high
I'll
all
tell you
the time.
What, speaking of cosplay, okay, I saw Silver Surfer at like one of the conventions and stuff. Like completely, he was wearing like the bikini bottom, and he was like slicked in the silver and stuff. And I'll tell you what, I would have said it takes balls to wear that costume. But based on the evidence, I'm kind of thinking maybe not so much.
No, it takes balls to wear that costume.
Boothman, you got a next question for us?
Of course I do. What are the 3 best comics I'm not reading?
Okay, just shout every comic you're reading. And we'll tell you what to add to the list.
Batman, Superman. That's it.
Well, hopefully you know about Concrete. I'd
Amazing
say that would be
comic.
the first.
Amazing.
Yeah, who asked
Amazing
that?
building
Raise your
supply.
hand if you asked that, not to put you on the spot. Are you reading Concrete?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good man. Are you talking more superhero or sort of more indie? Oh, nice. Out of the box, that's where I live.
I'd recommend Irredeemable Batman Incorporated and Shoe.
Good. That's literally the only box that you could be inside right now.
Yes.
Saga.
Except for Pete's
Yeah,
going through
Saga is
Saga.
great.
Great comic.
Saga's amazing. Yeah, you better be reading Saga.
Whoa,
You don't have to threaten.
I'm always running a couple years behind. Like I'm always like it's 2012. I'm stuck in like 2010 in terms of Echo.
Yeah.
It's finished, but a lot of people still haven't experienced
It's great.
it.
It's
So
good.
and if you, it's like the best '80s science fiction film that's was never made. Like
Yeah.
Starman or Close Encounters, and it also I contend it is the best comic ever about a woman shooting laser beams from her boobs.
Let us think on that for a while.
Yeah.
Boobs are scary.
Yeah. I would say there's this guy Jason who does a series of sort of short. Have you read that? That's very good. His stuff's very good. Sort of bleak, very spare.
Nice. Yeah.
Really cool stuff. That's not superhero either.
I've been reading this thing called Lights Booth. It's like real indie, you guys. You probably haven't heard of it, but you should check it out.
Oh, wow! No
Lights,
one's
Booth,
heard. That's
Bar,
that's the
Fontanas.
coolest. Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Great choice.
Cool.
There's
Thanks.
a guy named Tom Gold who does hardcovers mostly. He did, and he's a lot like Edward Gorey. And I don't know if he counts as I don't know if he's doing comic books or picture books or what you want to call them. It's images and words in a sequential story. So it kind of seems a little bit like
Works for
books,
me.
but he doesn't have word balloons or anything. And I definitely think Tom Gold is great the way Edward Gorey was great, and it's sort of worth a look if you really want to veer way off the beaten track. He's interesting.
Cool. There's a comic called Fear Agent by Rick Remender that is also ended, but that's very, very good. Sort of a hard
And
drinking
we were
space
talking about this on
cowboy
the show
type.
the other week, but there's a title that's just started at Dark Horse called Alabaster Wolves.
Yeah,
that
that's
to me
amazing.
feels like Fear Agent, but for horror instead of sci-fi. It's great. Definitely pick it up.
There's a little indie thing too. It's about this team of guys with, not all guys, but with remarkable talents. There's one guy who wears like a metal suit, and there's another guy who like freaks out and gets big and stuff like that.
Weird.
And, it's one of these things where I wish more people were exposed to it and heard about it and stuff.
Probably
So-
not.
What
Probably
that-
not.
that
in
guy
that
that-
world, what's going on with the chicken?
Yeah, great point.
Yeah,
that guy
thanks.
that freaks out, is he 3 years old? Because if he's not, I'm not interested in reading it.
Older, but good
Bullshit.
series. Good series.
Cool. That's it.
No, I've got a bunch more questions, but
No. Let's go into a lightning round. So
Okay.
first answer is correct.
all right. Which comic book character would you fight to the death and why? And would you win?
I would choose one that I would likely win. To fight?
Yeah, I'm going to go with my stock answer, Cypher, who I love, but I think I'd win.
How would you guys kill each
Yeah,
other?
how would you beat
By
Cypher?
through boredom?
Crying.
The extreme crying.
Crying.
Dehydration
Extreme
through
crying.
crying.
Both be throwing punches and be like, no.
Wow.
That's pretty much it.
All right.
Looking forward to that issue of X-Men Unlimited.
Next question.
This is for Mr. Hill. Why did you choose to write Lock and Key as a comic, and how has this affected the writing?
Well, because it began as a comic book pitch, I always saw it as a comic book. And because I have a comic book imagination, I always, a lot of my stories, I think of, I'll flirt back and forth between, would this be good as a novel? Would this be good as a comic? In terms of how it's changed my writing style, originally I would do 8 drafts of a script, and I would obsess over these intricate descriptions, and actually in the sort of this leather-bound, oversized edition of Locke and Key, and it's got all the scripts in the back of it.
The omnibus, Locke and Key?
It's not an omnibus, but it is big.
It's just short of being an omnibus.
But over time, I've become so close with Gabe, and we have this thing going. Usually I can finish a script in just a draft or two, and I know exactly what I need to talk about and what I don't, because Gabe will fill in the rest. And, and he's not, I sometimes say about Gabe, he's not an illustrator. He's writing. He's writing as much as I am. It's just instead of his paragraphs or panels, there's a wonderful panel in Clockworks 6 where, without ruining anything, where this one character is holding a jar and writing on it, and the word is supposed to be emergency, but she's not finished writing it, and what she's written is emerge. And that's all Gabe. And it's just this, I saw it, I thought, oh, geez, because if you know what happens to the stuff in the contents of this jar in a different story, you know that's just creepy. And that wasn't in the script, that's just Gabe.
Oh man, and English is his second language.
That's right. Yeah.
So to be able to be hitting those puns, that's a straight up pun.
Yeah, he's tremendously fluent. And I think like a lot of people who have multiple languages, he's better at reading it.
Yeah.
And maybe he can't verbalize although he's very very fluent, but maybe he can't articulate as well as he can pull information in.
It almost seems now that like he's just carrying you on this project.
He has really been carrying me. I actually haven't written a script. 10 issues. I do some word balloons at the end.
One more question?
We'll do one more
question. Let's do it.
If you had a head key, what character would you expunge?
Oh shit.
Oh, man.
Expunge or explore?
Whichever, whatever you want, buddy.
Joe, do you have an answer for that?
Expunge, get rid of him. Yeah.
From Locke and Key or from
from your own head.
Whatever
Your own
you
head.
want.
Your own head. Your own.
What would
Anyone
you take
ever.
out of your own head?
Yeah.
If the head,
what would I take out?
in the comic book Locke and Key, there's a key called a head key, and what it does, it goes,
Joe, listen up. This is important.
Okay. No. That you put it in the back of your neck and you open up your head, and it opens up the inner world of your thoughts, and you can take things out, put things in. But see, like I'm like the creator of the comics, so I know it's a really bad idea, and you don't want to take anything out.
Which one would you take out?
Nothing. I wouldn't fool with it. It's not
an intricate system of
and
checks
everyone
and
who
balances.
stuffs stuff into their heads thinks they're learning, but it's you don't absorb stuff the same way that you do when you actually think for yourself. It's almost like a message, like
oh no,
it
makes you think.
Don't do drugs.
I think I would take this moment down and then be like, cool, what should I take out?
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
take out a memory this whole evening.
Right.
Oh.
No.
All right.
I'd put in a radical dude.
Dude, just
Put in like a more radical dude.
Right. Like a skateboard, just stick
So
a skateboard
I would put the Silver Surfer in my head.
Pete, what about you?
I would like to take out the angry Hulk version of me that runs around in my brain, but
There'd be nothing left.
yeah, there'd be nothing left.
Phantom Menace.
Phantom Menace.
Take out Phantom Menace.
Wow.
No, you
Is
just
that a character in your head?
if you took out the Phantom Menace, you'd be like, "There's another
dang.
Star Wars. You should go check that
I
out."
can't wait. Deb, you realize I know like everyone loves Star Wars and that it's still like people still care and have their action. But do you realize that those stories have basically sucked since about like 1980? I mean, like people think like the old prequel was great. The first one was great. No, come on. I mean, the first two were great. Return was stale.
All right.
And then there were like the Ewok films, I think at this stage we got to say that there is more of Star Wars like the Ewok films than there were like, Erwin Kershner's, Empire Strikes Back. We have one fluke film, Empire, and then like a lot of Ewok adventures and droids.
Ewok Christmas changed my life.
That's it for your audience questions.
So that's it for the
Yeah.
live show. That was
Welcome
Joe
back.
Hill. Welcome back to the non-live show.
Yeah,
on Lock and Key
pre-taped.
Pre-taped. Lock and Key Unlock. I hope you all enjoyed that little throwback there. We're going to have a bunch more fun surprises and treats for you all in the Lock and Key Unlocked feed. So definitely subscribe there. A couple of things we should probably plug. We also already talked about our live show, which is currently running Tuesdays at 7 p.m. at the People's Improv Theater Loft in New York. So definitely come on by that. It is free every week. You can support us, patreon.com/comic book club. A couple of places you can check us out socially, Lock and Key Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. iTunes, Android, Spotify, Stitcher, or the app of your choice. If you want to subscribe, please leave us a comment on iTunes in particular. That helps us out a lot. And remember, keep those locks locked right here.
Unlock those locks.
No, I just keep them locked.